TTB Music Podcast.
Hey! Whoa!
Yeah.
Obviously, I thought I was Prince for a moment.
I would have done some growling, but hey, it's a bit easier on the throat.
Yeah.
Welcome back, listener and listener's friend. Podcast 11 of 2014. And what a show we've got for you tonight.
Hey, we certainly have.
Not only one album by Prince, but two albums by Prince. Artificial Age and Plectrumelctrum. We also have the new album from Cannibal Corpse, Skeletal Damien Rice's third album, my favourite Faded Fantasy. Primus, with Primus from the Chocolate Factory, which...
No surprises for guessing what that is.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it is.
Yay!
And Empire's Orphan. So we'll start off with the short purple one.
Yeah.
Like I said, two albums from Prince, 33rd and 34th studio albums, I believe.
Yes.
Are we actually recording?
Yeah, I'm just checking. Yeah, we are actually recording this time. Woo!
I didn't think to check, actually, yeah. Despite a final reminder from our listener.
That is what that thing does, isn't it? That line. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got this technology now.
We've got it now. You know, it's taken us 5 years to get to this point.
I know.
Yeah.
So back to Prince, yeah. 33rd and 34th album. Back on a major label after a long time away.
And is it not the same major label he was on?
It is, back on Warner again. The difference being this time that Warner have agreed that he owns the masters.
Okay.
And so because of that, we are treated to a Prince solo album, Artificial Age, and a Prince album with Third Eye Girl called Plectrumelctrum. So, was good, bad, indifferent, all three?
Artificial Age. It's a classic Prince album. Oh, all right. Okay, let's define classic for a moment. It's not a classic Prince album, but it's a very typical album of Prince. This is the pop one. Am I right? This is the pop one. This is the funky dancey one. Yeah. And this is probably one of my only criticisms of the album, is the first minute or two where he sort of sets himself up to a little bit in the style of Will.i.am. I end up thinking to myself, Prince, you're better than this, surely. I mean, no disrespect to Mr. William, but I thought that he could do so much more. And then it kicks in, and it does kick in, and we have Artificial Cage, and we have Clouds, which are sort of absolutely fantastic pieces of Prince weirdness, which is just great. And then you get a couple of really sort of what you would think would be typical Prince songs. Yeah. I mean, these songs could have been lifted from any album from the late 80s onwards.
Very true.
But in such a way, as always, it's got enough current in it to keep you interested. Breakdown in particular, I really enjoyed.
I think that's possibly the standout track on Artificial Cage.
Oh right, okay, yeah. So that's the one that really appealed to me. I also like Funk and Roll.
The only one that features on both albums.
Yes, exactly. We'll come to that. I like both versions as well. The version on here, of course, is a bit more. You couldn't call it a remix, but it's more of a version.
Yeah, it's more funky.
It's more funky. It's got that remix vibe to it.
The other one being a bit more rolling. Yeah,
absolutely. And somewhere in the middle, you've got a couple of other classics. Breakfast Can Wait, and This Could Be which is just brilliant. It's brilliant. So
I didn't realise you did.
Yeah, I can now do Prince impressions. I'm not going to do Cannibal Corpse impressions, but I can do Prince impressions. So overall, really enjoyed this album, more than I thought I was going to. How about yourself?
I'll sort of give away my opinion of the
See, I'm holding back.
Second album.
I'm holding back on
by saying that I think it's the.
Don't you hold back, Peter!
The weaker of the two albums. For me.
Well, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we established which album one.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And why I say that, and why I'd like to kind of express my opinions of them to get together is because the second album, Plectrumelctrum, reminded me a lot because this is more of a rock album than
Yes.
the other albums.
Than this album.
And it reminded me a lot, actually, of the much maligned Chaos and Disorder album from 1996, which I'm actually a fan of. And that year was also the year that Prince released, what was the album called? Emancipation. And so I think Artificial Age is kind of the emancipation to Plectrumelctrum's Chaos and Disorder.
Gotcha.
And in the same way, I preferred Chaos and Disorder to Emancipation.
Yeah.
But Emancipation had some really good tracks on it, and I think Artificial Age similarly does. And I think you're right. I think the first 3 tracks in particular, I think, are really good. Artificial Cage, Clouds with its what's the line there? Kind of the kiss on the neck kind of thing.
Kiss on the neck. Go out and get a flower.
Which
if
is
she's
really
in the shower.
good. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
you should never underestimate the effect of a kiss on the neck.
Yeah.
Which is actually very true.
It's very true.
Really good line.
Sexy.
And as you say, Breakdown is a classic Prince ballad,
Yeah.
but a really high standard Prince ballad.
Yeah. Really high standard.
yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
And then you've got this, you know, where Artificial Age is let down, I think, some ways. I don't think it kind of has the convictions of the concept that it sets out for
It
itself.
does have a concept, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure the
Because
concept
all the
really
talky
works.
bits kind of relate to a concept.
Yeah, which is all done by
I love her
Leanne
voice, by the
Hathas.
way.
Yeah.
That sort of that it was like listening. It was, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're going to say that. It was so sort of British in an
Yeah.
American sort of way.
Well, we've reviewed her before on the podcast.
Have
we?
we?
We didn't review her album. We reviewed
No.
her when she was on the BBC Ones to Watch. a few
Ah,
years
okay.
ago.
Oh, I didn't realise that. Okay, well, there we go.
So yeah, I think the concept of that album doesn't actually work as well as the concept of Plectrumelctrum, which seems to be, let's write a band rock album.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that seems to have focused, I think, Prince more on the songwriting and the way it kind of fits together as an album. So I actually think Plectrumelctrum is a terrific record. Starts off with Wow, which I think is just a brilliant track. Then you get kind of Pretz on Bloody Logic, also quite fun. Plectrumelctrum, the title track, is a terrific kind of instrumental piece,
Yeah.
giving Prince a chance to show off his
Yes,
guitar chops, which
superb.
he does quite a bit on the
Absolutely.
album.
Yeah.
Fiction Life Up, similarly really good. Another Love, great track. And I should say Funk and Roll, both versions, as you
Both
rightly say,
versions, yeah.
are really, really good. I really, really like this record, actually. It is possibly my favourite Prince album since Chaos and Disorder.
Gosh, right. Okay.
In 1996.
I mean, I have to say, it's a very compared to Artificial Age. It's Artificial Age. It's a much tighter album, and you feel that there is that benefit of him just sort of going out with a band and doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And it feels much more like a live show. But shout out to the Three-Eyed Girls as well, because
Indeed.
I actually really enjoyed Whitecaps.
Yes, lovely track.
Which
lovely
is
track.
the sort of the again, it's a classic Prince style ballad, but obviously with a female vocal.
Which obviously
Yeah.
there's a lot of that
Yes.
over the years.
Yeah, exactly. But really good. You know what I mean?
Indeed. So we're saying basically a thumbs up for the return of Prince then.
Yeah, absolutely. These two albums together. Listen to Artificial Age first, then Plectrumelctrum is my advice.
That's the way I did it. So
Is that the way you did it?
So
Oh,
obviously I
okay.
was paying attention.
No, very good. It's good. Because I kind of split the two up and sort of listened to the other things in between, just to get a sense of perspective. But yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
And on those things in between.
I can imagine your perspective, really. If
My
if
perspective.
Cannibal Corpse, Skeletal Domain was one of those albums.
It was.
So, the 13th album from the American death metal band.
Really?
Yeah, Cannibal Corpse.
Ow.
And it's safe to say this is full attack, full splatter, gore, full everything, and fully boring, really.
Yeah.
And this is one of those weird occasions when I'm really glad that we reviewed another album earlier on in the year, particularly the Behemoth album, which was a fellow growling metal act, which handily acts as a perfect comparison to this record.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I think a Skeletal Domain succeeds in doing is highlighting just how much of a better record Behemoth's The Satanist actually is.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We it's not like we're averse to reviewing this sort of music, and we've done it. I think we've done it this year particularly.
We have
extensively. This album is just dull.
Yeah,
it's just dull because musically it's not that interesting. All right, I think on the penultimate track, Asphyxiate to Resuscitate, there's a little bit of interesting proto-industrial sort of guitar-y stuff with a drum machine that reminded me of Ministry. Or
Ministry, yeah.
Or possibly
yes.
More Ministry than Nin. And so I had to get to the final track or two to get that. But other than that, it's just dull. In that same track, though, most amusingly, there is a lyric that sounds like, although I can't be 100% certain, sounds like "cover your ears," which I think is the best selling point of this album.
Yeah.
No, the best selling point, the best the highlight for me. There is a sustained 4-second break between Vector of Cruelty and Bloodstained Cement. And it was just bliss. Those 4 seconds of
breathe. Yeah.
Before the onslaught started again.
Yeah, I agree. It is an album that does feel like going through the motions of the whole Death Speed metal thing.
Yeah.
But, you've got your nods, as you said, you've got your nods to Metallica,
There are
Slayer, Megadeth.
The nods are there,
their own back catalogue. Without any track really hanging together, really. I mean, there's occasional nice riffs, there's a nice bit of guitar shredding, but as you say, it all rings a bit hollow, really.
Yeah.
And because of that, it does end up feeling twice its 43-minute running time when trying to listen to it as an album. So even as a professed metal fan, listening to this album was a bit of a chore. Yeah,
this is hard work.
If, as Killen Become suggests, you do fire up your chainsaw, I would suggest taking it to this record, frankly.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, moving on to slightly quieter stuff. We have the long-awaited third album from Damien Rice, my favourite faded fantasy. Apparently 8 years since 9 came out. You would have thought he could have hold on for another year to make it,
make it 10.
Good marketing kind of thing.
Or 9, yeah.
Yeah, although the album has 8 tracks, it presumably has taken a year to write each one by the sounds of it. And almost that long to listen to them. Yeah. So, Damien Rice back, Rick Rubin in the production chair. And
he's done a Rick Rubin on Damien Rice. He's reminded us all why we liked the first album in the first place.
Yeah, take it away from there, Pete.
Okay, let's be honest. This album I struggled with to start with, and I certainly struggled with the first 2 or 3 tracks because they are very long tracks. And as a consequence, I feel that the album takes a while to establish itself, and it's difficult to sort of break into it. That said, there comes a moment, track 4 or 5, where I suddenly remembered what I actually did quite like about Damien Rice's earlier stuff. I can see Scott pulling a face. No, it wasn't that.
Oh, come on! Sorry. When you said that, I don't want to change you. Every time I've played this album, I just think James Blunt when the track comes on.
Okay, that's the limit. And I think the introduction of a full sweeping orchestra probably doesn't help. But it does detract from the quietness of the album when you have a full sweeping orchestra blasting in your ears as well.
It does, yeah.
There are some tracks on this I actually found, particularly in the second half of the album. Oh my goodness! Well, there's a clue as to when we're filming, recording even.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's kind of
either the studio's under attack or it's bonfire night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and continue. It's a bit like having the sweeping orchestra in your ears. Or,
live from Syria.
Or the Cannibal Corpse drum solo behind me. Boom.
Someone's trying to stop us from reviewing Damien Rice.
Really, it's not that bad. The second half of the album is
almost as long as the first half.
Almost as long as the first half, but I actually quite enjoyed it. I don't know if I was sort of bullied into this opinion by the first half of the album, but I actually quite enjoyed listening to him, and I quite enjoyed the process of each track and how, you know, lyrically it fit together, how it worked with the orchestra, and I found it got more settled in the second half of the album. Or maybe I was just numbed.
Yes, I was numbed by the end of it.
So I quite enjoyed this. You know,
I wrote the first thing I wrote down about this album.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, the first thing I wrote down about this album was it's a nice album. The second thing I wrote was it's an album for people that own Lighthouse Family albums.
Oh, that's harsh. Because I hate the Lighthouse Family.
That was just what I thought. I know what you're saying. It's again like a bit like the Cannibal Corpse album, but for different reasons. It's an album that feels longer than it is, and needlessly so. I mean, like I said, most of the tracks on this, 5 minutes is the shortest track on this album, and there are several that are, you know. The second track, It Takes a Lot to Know a Man, is almost 10 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
See, I actually don't mind it as a track, at least the first bit of it.
Yeah.
But it's a track that should have ended after 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't need another 6 minutes
Yeah.
at all. Similarly, the opening track, actually, My Favourite Fed Fantasy, I was listening to that and just thinking, this would be great if it was like a Portishead remix.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
As you say, the middle of it gets a bit kind of bland and blunty, but it's fine. The box, I thought, was one of the most interesting tracks on the album, actually, because I had that kind of, when it actually kicks in, it has that kind of element of kind of 70s Bond theme,
Yeah, it takes you,
or kind of Harry Palmer.
Yeah,
kind
it takes you with it, you know.
So the box I actually quite liked.
That was what was working for me on a subliminal.
Final two tracks I thought were perhaps the dullest things I'd heard in a long time.
I like the fact that Long Long Way, the final long way, the final track, finished on an oboe.
Yes, I got so bored by that point that actually did pass me by, despite listening to the album 3 times.
Okay, all right, fair enough. You missed the oboe.
Yeah.
So overall, I'm going to say it's. Yeah, I can't agree. That's a very good way of summing it up. I think you meant it in a more derogatory fashion, but it is a nice album.
No, I didn't mean to do it. I mean, it is a nice fact. It is a nice album. It is, you know,
one for dinner parties, folks.
Yeah, nice.
And Christmas is coming up.
This is very true.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the 8th studio album from rock band Primus, and it's called Primus and the Chocolate Factory, and that's primarily because this album is actually a reimagining of the soundtrack of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it's it's kind of bonkers. Wonkers to bonkers.
Yeah.
I'm almost speechless. It's a truly splendidly warped reinterpretation of the work that's a bit actually reminded me a hell of a lot of Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
It's almost like Zappa doing Wonka with a little tiny sprinkling of Todd Rundgren, which obviously is not a bad thing in my mind, Zappa or Rundgren.
That's two things.
I loved it.
Yeah. No, I really, really enjoyed this record.
It's hard to describe. It's hard to describe it other than saying, you know, Oompa Loompa.
The concept seems very Flaming Lipsian.
Yeah, who seem to be making their whole career out of recovering albums.
But I understand that they've kind of gone off the boil. That's another podcast. But as far as Primus is concerned, it's the reinterpretation aspect that is really interesting, because, as you say, it sort of taps into the soul of Willy Wonka.
The darkness of it.
The darkness of it is definitely there. And I do wonder if, rather than record a classic album like Sgt. Pepper or Dark Side of the Moon, actually plumping for a soundtrack from a much favoured 70s movie is actually a really neat idea. And they bring something of themselves to it. And the reinterpretations of some of the tracks on here. I mean, some of the tracks, you've got to remember this album, some of the tracks on here have become classics in their own right.
Absolutely. Pure Imagination, Candyman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pure Imagination. It's almost a sacred cow. You know, you don't mess with it. They do mess with it. And they actually, then they do it really well. It takes a couple of listens, because you kind of expecting the whole, you know, but actually it's nothing like that at all.
It's definitely nothing like that.
I mean the Oompa Loompa. So I mean, just talking about thrash metal a minute ago, you can imagine Oompa Loompa. You know, it's like, you know, it's hilarious. So this album, yes, really enjoyed. Will bring a smile to your face.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it would be great. Unfortunately, it'd be hard to match up the kind of on some of the main songs, match up the mouths. But other than that, it would have been nice to kind of have this kind of scored over the original.
To do the score thing.
Yeah.
Well,
And, you know, I also say Trent Reznor, pay attention. Bit more of this kind of stuff, less of the beep boop 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 stuff. Really starting to get tiresome now. Really.
yeah. You've not listened to Gone Girl, though.
I
Have you
haven't.
listened to Gone Girl?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I've already got it. I own I've got the other two soundtrack albums.
Yeah. No. Well, we're not talking about it, but Gone Girl. Yeah. Okay. It's a progression. I quite enjoyed it. We can talk about that next time,
Or not.
or not.
So we finish off with the third full studio album from Chicago indie band called Empires, and the album is called Orphan. Yeah, it's the Killers, isn't it?
It is the Killers, or is it? Because I found, again, kind of the reverse effect of the Damien Rice album. I found the first couple of tracks really, really good.
Yeah.
Silver Fire and the title track Orphan. Thought this is going to be a great indie album. We've not had a good indie album for a while.
No.
And we haven't had a good indie album for a while without spoiling the rest of my review. It kind of goes off somewhere in the middle, and it's like they pull it so together with those first 2 or 3 tracks in terms of how they're going to establish what their style is. All right, Killers-ish. And then they kind of break it down and lose it a little bit. It goes at one point it's the Strokes, and then it's Franz Ferdinand, and those are two sort of bands that you can't imagine touring together or playing back to back, you know. And it goes a very Franz Ferdinandian in the middle, and to be fair, it picks up again towards the end, but never quite returns to the glory of the sort of opening 2 or 3 tracks.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, it started off and not knowing anything about the band before we decided to do this one. It was one of those ones I thought, oh yes, they've pretty much preached the same kind of Duran, Simple Minds, U2, OMD template that the Killers took.
Yeah, but not as well.
Yes. So I would disagree slightly. I'd say I'd agree on the whole, although. Given that we reviewed the last Killers album, I think I actually enjoyed this record more than the last Killers album.
That's a given.
So they're currently doing the Killers better than the Killers are.
Yeah.
I agree. The album starts off pretty good. I like. Talking of songs that are very Killers, I think the title track, Honey Blood, and Journey Kid right at the tail end of the album are very Killers type pop.
Yeah.
How Good Does It Feel in the middle of the album is I think it was the first single off the album, is very, very catchy as well. And I think they're a band that certainly have all the ingredients to become a household name, actually. You know, the right circumstances. There's definitely material on here that you can imagine being played a lot by people.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think it's better than the last.
The elements are all there. What I'm saying is, it doesn't sustain across the whole album.
No, it doesn't. You're right. I like the guy's voice. It has very hints of kind of Brian Ferry going on there at times, which I quite liked. But yeah, overall, I think you're right. It doesn't quite. Starts off, you're thinking, yeah, this could be the one. This could be that great indie album we've been looking for
years.
Yeah, it is years as well, sadly.
It's 5 years, I think.
But it's not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's always great to end on a bummer, isn't it?
Yeah. So my album of the month is Primus. Closely followed by Plectrumelctrum.
Okay. It's a tough one this time. It really is. Because the quirkiness of Primus is, it's a great thing, but I don't think I can honestly hand on heart say it's my favourite album of the podcast. So
does that mean you're going for Cannibal Corpse then?
Yeah, it's Cannibal Corpse. No, it's certainly not Cannibal Corpse. In fact, I think I have an award in mind for that later this year. It's going to be... I'm going to go with Prince. And I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to say I like both of them equally.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And on that note, we shall leave you and return in December for more than one podcast.
That doesn't feel right somehow, but yes.
I know. Where has the year gone?
I don't know. That classic album hasn't turned up yet, has it?
No. Plenty of solid ones.
Yes. Indeed.
But that's it then.
Yeah.
Something for another time.
See you then.
You've been listening to the CTTV Music Podcast.